Right, I'm thrilled to introduce today Dr. Torkil Faero. He is a general practitioner, emergency physician, documentary filmmaker, author, and photographer. Wow, so cool. Author of The Pulse Cure, Balance Stress, Optimize Health, and Live Longer. Yes, please. I feel like this book bridges the gap between cutting edge science and practical well being. And honestly, it's a must read for anyone seeking to improve their resilience, reduce inflammation, and embrace a healthier future. You are in the right community today because I know that all of our listeners are going,
hmm
Be pleased. So welcome, Dr. Dorgal. How
hmm
are you?
Thank you. I'm fine, Lindsay. Yeah, I'm doing fine here in Norway. It's getting towards springtime, and yeah, so very happy.
Yes. The weather's beautiful. Is this true? Do you speak 8 different languages?
Yes, yes, I do. Yeah, Spanish, Portuguese, French, Italian, Dutch, English, of course, German. Yeah,
That is, it's amazing. I'm working on my first, I'm
mm.
finally doing Duolingo,
Yeah, yeah,
trying
yeah.
to get a second
I
language
wouldn't
going.
speak all of them fluently, but I would manage to get by. But with Spanish and Portuguese and English, of course, and German, I should be fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. Very cool. Fun fact for the day. So I'm going to read a little something because this is part of your story, and I would like for you to go in a little more depth for our community. But you mentioned that at some point in your life, you were 40 pounds overweight, undertrained, overstressed, underslept, and drinking alcohol daily. And you kind of had this aha, I'm taking decades possibly off my life. And I thought this was interesting because I don't think that your story's unique. I think that a lot of people could be like, yeah, I could probably fit into that category. So, walk us through your journey and just what we're going to dive into today.
Yeah, so I'm a general practitioner. I didn't really care so much about my own health, really. I was mainly focused on living an adventurous life, going around traveling, photographing, doing interesting things. And in that process, I had really neglected my own health. And as my father died at 73, I just took a look in the mirror and understood that I'm starting to look a lot more like my patients. And by then, I had like tens of thousands of consultations, so I knew that this is not good. I need to change my lifestyle. I have done all the mistakes in my own book and needed to correct them all. And it's probably quite funny how a doctor could do all these mistakes, so to speak, but we didn't have the idea as doctors that we could gain so much from living a healthier lifestyle. We thought we may live like 3 or 5 years longer, but it would take you 3 to 5 years of effort to get those years. So I even bother. Now we know so much more about preventative health. There will be 2 decades to gain of extra life once you, well, follow the prescription in the Pulse Cure. And the good thing now is that we have the wearables. We can use our heart rate as a guide. And with Garmin watches or Aura rings or Whoop bands and all the different new technology that can help us motivate ourselves towards a better lifestyle. So that is what I did, and that is what I wrote about in the Pulse Cure, which has been just a huge Norwegian bestseller, setting me into a now close to 2.5 year roller coaster ride as a best-selling author and translated into seven, maybe eight languages soon. So that has really changed my life. So, and I know that it has changed so many people's lives. So that is the good thing for me as a doctor that I'm able to not only cure or alleviate disease as a doctor one-on-one, but that I'm able to give advice based on my 26 years as a doctor for people so they can avoid coming to my office and stay healthy.
Great. No, this is amazing. And with your wonderful accent that we're listening to, in case the community didn't hear this, it's wearables. And then you were giving these examples of the Fitbit or a Ring, Apple Watch. I think that we should dive into this. I've been podcasting for almost 6 years, and I have never had this conversation in this type of depth that we're about to go into about our pulse. And so you're laying some groundwork here for our listeners. They're not used to having this deep dive into pulse either. So if you could kind of take us through a 101 course of how this became so significant and what your takeaways are with understanding your pulse.
Yeah. So it's about not only the pulse or the heart rate in itself, it's about a concept called heart rate variability, the variation between heartbeats, which is the most important metric that these smartwatches and smart rings will pick up. And what heart rate variability is that it's possible to find out whether you are in the stress state or in the restful state. And that is, of course, very, very important to be able to regulate your stress balance. And the reason why I can do that is that the foundations of our nervous system is the autonomic nervous system, an ancient system that we share with all vertebrates, all mammals. We share it with reptiles and rats, and it still kind of works like it always has done through 100 millions of years. And it's possible to to measure the state of this autonomic nervous system. And then I have to explain then to your listeners that it's divided into two parts. The sympathetic fight, flight, and freeze part, which I would also say fun and hunt because we also use it for pleasurable activities. And on the opposite side, we have the parasympathetic restful mode, which is the recovery mode. That's where our body and brain recovers from the stress. And what is the problem in our society is that we are too much in the stressed side of this autonomic nervous system. And the reason why the heart rate can pick up on this is that when we are in the restful state, there will be a variation between the heartbeats. When we breathe in and there's more oxygen in the lungs, the heart rate will speed up a little bit. And when we breathe out and there's less oxygen, it will slow down a little bit. And this is why the smartwatches can pick up this. But when we are in the stressful state, regardless of us breathing in or out, the heart will beat more like a metronome, very steady like a clock. And the wearables, they keep track of this round the clock while we are busy living our lives and registering the degree of stress that is in our lives. And then, of course, help us to identify stressors that may be hidden from you and makes it easier, of course, to navigate. Just like the dashboard in your car makes it easier to keep the right speed and see how much gas is left on the tank and all of that. This is kind of a dashboard into our own physiology that is so valuable and helps us to navigate a stressful life and find the balance.
Thank you. That was a beautiful explanation. And knowing that you took this journey yourself, what were some of the first things that you noticed? Did you start with the wearable and at the beginning of your journey, or did that come a little later once you had already started to get a little healthier, a little less stressed, all of that fun stuff?
That came about halfway into the journey, maybe 5 years into the journey. So I quite quickly understood that alcohol would be the first thing to go. And of course do exercise and lose weight. And then some 5 years into my journey, I became aware that the smartwatches and different kind of devices could measure the stress balance. And then I identified so many stressors that I would never have thought of, just like food, that I couldn't tolerate gluten very well, that I couldn't tolerate chili or mustard very well, and that late night meals would be devastating for the sleep quality and many other different factors. So I was expecting to see that I was calm all the time, that I was in the restful recovery mode, but I was actually in the stressful mode all the time that I was not aware of. And it was mainly food that did it. And previously it was alcohol. So actually I started drinking a little bit of alcohol when I got the wearables just to find out how does it work. So now maybe I drink alcohol like 3 times a year, where I earlier used to have 2 or 3 glasses of wine every day because that's used to be doctor's orders. It used to be recommended as a healthy lifestyle, right? So now I only drink occasionally, and I can see on the wearables that it's terrible for my stress levels. And with the success of the book and everything that's happening to me all the time, I don't have time for bad days. I have to be productive and perform every day. So that makes it more important for me to listen to the wearables. And of course, many people will say that why can't we just listen to our body? But we are not really equipped to do that. We have excellent senses, we have eyes, and we have hearing, and we smell, and we taste and feel very well. Because previously, throughout history, that has been the outside that the threats to our life and health has been coming from animals and enemies and foul food and poisonous plants and all of this. But now what is threatening our health now is a stress that is out of balance. So we never needed to develop this feeling of stress. So I could have a really high stress levels measured in the heart rate, and I would not really be aware of it until I check my watch. But it will still wear us out, right? Which is why so many people get into a burnout situation, having fatigue problems, brain fog, contracting many different diseases because when we are under too much stress, our immune system is not performing optimally. This is the problem with stress. In itself, stress wouldn't be any problem if it wasn't for this fact, right? So we all want to perform better, have better well-being, and a longer lifestyle. And this is what I really talk about in my book. And the good thing is that the heart rate and these helpful devices can help us to do this. They track my Garmin watch, that is my favorite device, will track temperature and oxygen level in the blood. It will have my movement pattern and the heart rate. And together with measurements from millions of users and artificial intelligence, it can present an estimate of my lifestyle and just see if this is sustainable with health or not.
Mhm. No, that's interesting. Gosh, there's so much in this. I just want to go through. So Garmin's your favorite. Let's start with that. Let's say that somebody already has an Apple Watch or a Fitbit. Do you feel like even if it's not your preferred, the information is still like giving everybody a good enough baseline or it's accurate to itself enough that you can get good reads?
It, it is way better than nothing, I would say that, but they are not as good as Garmin. And the reason why Garmin is better is that they are tracking it 24 7, right? I can see on my watch in the moment, my stress levels, and I can see it throughout the day. So I can identify that the high stress, for example, was between 2 and 3 o'clock after I had a meal with this certain ingredient, for example, or that I was talking to this particular person, and this person either stresses me or excites me, right? But you can see the load on your system, while you wouldn't be able to see that from the Fitbit or the Apple Watch. I really compare it to that you go for a big shopping, you buy lots of stuff, and you only get presented with a total, and you don't know what each item cost, right? So the Garmin watch makes it possible to discern which item cost what is stressing you and at what time and to what extent.
Which feels like the meat of all of this. Like it kind of feels like if you can't see it that clearly defined. I mean, the food portion alone that you're talking about is blowing my mind that you have come to these conclusions. And have you ever backed it up? Have you done a food sensitivity type testing before to see
Yeah.
if it reads the same?
Yes, I did. And because it was so hard for me to figure out. I could see that the difference between my fasting level of stress and after I was eating was so high. And I tried to find out, but in the end, I just gave up and did a food intolerant test. And I tolerate gluten and milk, not terribly, but there is some effect of it. And then when I cut that out or minimize it, I can see it also in the heart rate. And so many people will be affected by this. That is maybe the most common thing that people find out once they start it. What they would be mostly surprised about is the effect of alcohol. They would know that it has some effect, but when they see the extent of it, the physiological price of it, then they really become shocked, most people. And I haven't met anyone starting to track their system that hasn't reduced the amount of alcohol. and got away with these kind of unnecessary glasses and kept the ones for social occasions and so on. But and also what they would be surprised about is how late meals will affect their sleep. So that's
Mhm.
very common. So other than that, you will find out that there's a lot of individuality, so that most people would react to the same things, but to a different degree. So this is personalized medicine, I would say. This is personalized, preventable, measurable medicine.
So I could see some individuals feeling a little overwhelmed by our conversation because they're seeing your journey and your picture years later, right? And when we hear cut out alcohol and change your food intake and like all these things, when we hear it, sounds great. But then when you're living it, there's difficulty in all of it, right? Because we have these habits built in from our entire life. So I'm just kind of curious, like, if you were giving somebody just a step by step, like, let's just start here. This is the low hanging fruit. And then you have time to keep investigating and keep going. What's your like peace conversation around this to just lure people in one baby step at a time?
Yeah, and I would say just that. It may be a long journey. You need to be patient. You need to accept what you see, and then slowly, step by step, try to improve it if you find that you need to. And what is motivating about this is that you can see the effect. So you eat this or that, and you see that, okay, I would rather have a salad than a pizza. Most people find that pizza is horrible for their stress levels, for example. And then, of course, it's not so tempting to have a pizza, and it motivates you to eat something else instead. Also, when you feel that you are more refreshed the day after, you're not so tired. And you wouldn't necessarily know that it came from the pizza. You may have thought that it came from the social activities you had the day before,
Right.
such as I did. I would never, until I started tracking my heart rate, even consider that how I felt in the morning would have anything to do with what I was eating 12 hours before. Once you get to track it, you see the connections. And then it becomes more motivating to do the choices. And I would also, of course, the Pulse Cure is the world's first guidebook in how to use the wearables in this way. And when you have that, it's so much easier because it's a step-by-step guide that will start with sleep. Because when you optimize or rather normalize sleep, then you get the energy to do some of the more things that requires effort, like changing your diet, like doing some exercise. But rather
Yes.
than changing your whole life around, you do small steps in the different parts. Some steps to improve your sleep, some steps to improve your diet, your movement, having some way of stress management like breath work or cold therapy or meditation or reading or whatever will show up on your device as a calming activity. Because it may surprise you what calms you down and what will stress you.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for highlighting, I call them ripple effects, then your example is with the sleep that all of a sudden makes the eating easier or makes the exercising easier. We open up little pockets of brain space that go, oh, now I have the mental capacity to go do that. And it does take that. And you're mentioning we get to see our insides, is basically what you're saying. And I think this is a huge piece that's lacking on any health journey is that ability to go, okay, maybe the scale's not budging, but my stress is going down, but my inflammation's going down. And oftentimes we can't see that, not initially. And so to have a device that's actually showing us our small wins along the way is a really big deal. I was going to tell you, I had a client who did the CGM, the continuous blood glucose monitor. And that like shifted her whole eating because she could see what it was doing to her blood sugars. And then once she was able to be like, oh, that makes that big of a difference, it was so much easier to change. So I think you're giving this example in so many other facets of life that if we can see the change, then of course our motivation feels different. So thank you. That was huge.
Yeah,
Forward.
what you measure you can manage, just like with the CGM, as you say.
Mhm.
So yeah.
What you measure, you can manage. I like that. I really like that. Give me something that I'm not asking you right now that you feel like this would be
Mm,
really important for our community to
that
hear.
I would know, yes, because your audience is mainly women.
Hmm.
And so the female hormones will affect the stress immensely, both when you are in the fertile period, when you have the menstruation. Then we can clearly see that the week before menstruation, the first day, then the stress level is quite high in people who have PMS symptoms. So it's not only a feeling or a mood, irritability or brain fog. It's a physiological load that you can see on your system. And I can see that the stress and the dip in heart rate variability is as high as if you're having a strong COVID infection. So for so many women in this age, from their starting puberty until they get into the perimenopause, they will be affected by this. And when you start to mitigate the stress, then you can flatten the curve. So instead of having like a COVID infection 1 week every month, you can flatten it so that you are relieved of most of the PMS symptoms. And in addition to that, when you get into the perimenopause, you would also be able to see that in the stress levels. And you would be able to see that when you use the right hormone replacement therapy, you would also be able to see that it will also relieve the stress measured by your heart rate. So actually, there are many, many women that have changed their brand of hormone replacement to something better that suits them better, and they can both feel it and see it. So
Wow.
that would be important for women.
Wow, so important. And yes, we are really starting to investigate all the perimenopause and menopause hormone replacement therapy. That's obviously a hot topic right now. And it's so interesting to hear that connect to pulse as well. You started to talk about different breath work or ways to manage stress. Maybe we should dive there a little bit more because I think that somebody can see it and not know what to do about it.
Yeah, right. So the breath work is what is the brake pedal. So what many people will find is that they are gassing along with no brakes. And then the most easy way that is always with you, of course, is breathing and slow breathing. So just slowing your breathing down is very, very effective to calm yourself down. It's a close your eyes, breathe slowly, and you would be able to see, at least on the Garmin watch, you would be able to see it in real time that you are calming your system down. And you wouldn't be able to see it necessarily on your Apple Watch or Fitbit.
Hmm.
And then it's so much easier to do and motivating to do. If you're sitting in a meeting, for example, and you see that you have a high stress levels, you just breathe slowly for a minute or two, and you can alleviate the stress. And you can always use it even as you are busy doing something in the grocery store or driving your car or whatever you do.
Mhm.
And another way for stress management would be cold, actually, temperature. A cold shower, putting the temperature in your office or in your bedroom down a little bit, not so that you will be cold, but a bit cool. And you would be able to see that on your stress levels as well. And breath work, it would be the easiest way is probably just to breathe slowly, maybe 4 seconds in and 6 seconds out. Try to have the out breath a little bit longer than the in breath is usually good. And then you would breathe 6 times a minute, which would be about half the time that you would normally breathe, which is a strong signal to your autonomic nervous system that it's calm outside, that the system can relax, and it will make it easier for the immune system to perform.
This is brilliant on so many levels because, some people consider some of this woo-woo, the breath work, the cold water therapy, tapping. I don't know your belief systems around that. I've even heard heat therapy. And to actually have something that when we try one of these to see the difference, to see that it is working, again, we get to see our insides. So it makes it so much more like I will do the breath work or I will do the cold water therapy because I can see, not only feel, but see that it could actually help. So that's huge.
Exactly. And it has been woo-woo because we haven't had any measurement for it. We doctors, we like to measure it. If it's measured, it's happened, right?
Mhm.
And this is a way, and this is the only signal that is accessible for us to show that we are calming ourselves down. So it's not woo-woo anymore because we can measure it. So and in the beginning in Norway, it was the doctors were very skeptic about this, and then all the patients came to the doctors, asking, showing the results from their watches and rings, and little by little the doctors had to learn about these things because it's been so common now in Norway because of the book. And now that they can use it, because this gives an insight into the more diffuse symptoms that so many people have, that we don't have a lab test or a radiological test, but it's visible in the heart rate. So suddenly, many of these fatigue problems will become visible, and the patients can show to the doctor that, look here, this is what's happening when I do this or that. And they have often struggled to be believed by their doctors because of the lack of, lab tests and so on. But this makes it easier to communicate with their practitioner, so that they also can cooperate. And many of the ones that have been the most happiest about the book have been so-called alternative practitioners, I would say, because finally what they are doing can be measured, and the patient or client is so happy also because they will see the result of what they have been doing.
Yes, it pairs beautifully with the alternative therapies. Oh my goodness. So I will 100% be getting your book. Where else for anybody going, this is amazing. Where's the best place to purchase and other places to find you?
Yeah, to purchase the book would be anywhere on Amazon. It's a normal published book from a British publisher, and it's also an audiobook. I know many podcast
Hmm.
listeners prefer to listen to a book rather than reading it. And I also have a website called thepulsecure.com, where you can see a video lecture where I'm talking about these things and demonstrating it, so you can see the results, how I use the Garmin watch. And yeah, on Instagram, I'm Dr. Torkil, so that is one place to see me.
Awesome. And all of that will be in the show notes as well. And if you could just highlight one last time, if you could wrap your arms around our community, if they heard nothing else that you said today, what would you like to leave our listeners with?
I would like to leave them with the fact that we have much more control of our health than we are maybe led to believe. So we are standing with the control, and this puts the control right into literally your own hands. It's taking it from the doctor and the healthcare system and puts it into your own hands, which is a huge difference.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. You are wonderful and you are welcome back anytime. And I hope that you
Th-
have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. It was very nice to be here. So, yeah, love to be back.